Hello and welcome to another 31 Days of Horror 2017 video. We're looking at movie 5. It's late. In fact, you can see I'm the only one here. Leslie went to bed. So I am stuck here doing the review. She did give me her thoughts, so I will pass those on to you. We are looking at the film Ghosthouse. That's the English title. I guess the original title would be La Casa 3, being an Italian film, yes. But what we watched was all in English. Yeah. So, I'll start with the synopsis. What is the film about? The film is about, well, it starts off with a family, mother, father, and a daughter. The daughter is found in the basement by the father, having just somewhat recently killed their cat with some scissors. And so he punishes her by essentially locking her in the basement with the lights off. But she doesn't mind. She's okay because she has her demonic doll clown doll, whatever you want to say, which is like right out of Poltergeist. And so he goes upstairs and he's talking to his wife, and he doesn't know what to do with their daughter. And she leaves the room, and eventually some dude with an axe comes over, or somebody or something with an axe comes over and gives it to him. And then she comes back to the room to find him dead, screams, and then the mirror starts doing some crazy bending and stuff, and she just sits there watching it like, wow, she's mesmerized or something. And then it explodes and she dies from, getting mirror in the face. And then you fast forward, I don't know, a bunch of years later, I guess to the present day. So I think the opening sequence is supposed to be like 1967, and then move to present day, which in this case wouldn't be so much present day as it would be, I guess, when the film was released, which was 1988. And we've got a young couple in I guess it was like a high-rise building of some sort. He's there and she's out, I don't know, phoning from a telephone booth or something. And he's on a ham radio. So he's a ham radio enthusiast. In fact, he's got a huge setup. And she comes back to their place for dinner, and he ends up getting a weird radio message. Like, he tunes into a weird radio message with some crazy music and some screaming and some calls for help. They decide to track down where the signal comes from. And of course the signal comes from the house from the opening scene. And there they meet up with a bunch of other young, I guess, bystanders who have decided they have I guess they're traveling. And they have a sort of like a camper van, a very small camper van. So one of them also happens to be a ham radio enthusiast. Go figure. 2-in-1 movie. And he happens to be where the source of this weird music and screaming and calls for help came from, but he clearly denies that he sent it because he just literally put the radio up there and hasn't actually, attached an antenna or anything to it, so it doesn't work just yet. And so thus begins the mystery, and they, essentially, I guess it's a haunted house movie from that point on, except for the fact that, we get introduced a caretaker of sorts for the property who is then pinned on the first murder is sort of pinned on him, because you know that's you need a scapegoat. Can't be ghosts, right? And so you enter the cops, and the cops, you know, are tracking him down and such, and eventually they get him. He ends up. They don't get him exactly, but they know who he is. So they explain to them, yeah, you know, it must have been him. He's from like a mental institution, but he's allowed to look over the grounds. Of course, it's a crazy guy. Yeah, so that plays out, and it sort of climaxes with both, you know, ghost-like stuff happening and killing people, and this caretaker guy also going around and, you know, killing people and attacking people and such. So, yeah, there's that. The film is from Umberto Lenzi. You should know who Umberto Lenzi is. He is one of, I guess you'd call him one of the masters of Italian cinema in general. Specifically, I like him for his horror outings. But he's done like over 60 movies that he directed, and he's done all sorts of other stuff too. This was just probably not his best film. Actually, I'm not going to say, scratch the probably. This was not his best film. I mean, I guess for him, Cannibal Ferox may be one of his most well-known. Nightmare City is probably another one that's way up there. But I mean, he's done the spaghetti westerns. He's done a whole, well, yeah, crime movies and such. It's standard Italian fare, right? What you know Italy for back then. He had his hand in it, and he's done a ton of films, many of which I do enjoy and such. But this one was definitely not one of his better outings. That's not to say it doesn't have its good parts. The film's opening has a very almost like a Hammer haunted house feel to it. The way it plays out, and it's probably the best scene in the entire film. Even though there are some cool things that happen, you know, throughout the film, but as a whole, it's probably the best scene. And you know, that often happens with a lot of films, right? You get that opening grab scene, and it's pretty good, and then the rest of the film is kind of a little bit slower. Well, this one ends up being a lot slower. Yeah, the opening scene it has like a Hammer haunted house feel to it, in terms of pacing and look even, and then it obviously has that Italian, you know, giallo horror movie type flair, where, you know, in Hammer films, yes, you might get a kill, and you might get some red contrast and stuff. The Italians take it a little bit more to actually give you a kill, where you actually see it happen. Like, you know, the guy gets an axe right to his head, boom, you see it, and of course the red is definitely going to be there. Lots of red, lots of, you know, gore type stuff, effects happening, a lot of dead body type things, and that's throughout the film in general. But that opening scene really has that mix of the two together, and so I was really, you know, kind of digging it. And then it just kept going and going, and you realize that the characters in this film, the two that start off the film, are essentially, I guess, your main characters. You've got, the guy is Paul, and the girl is Martha. Paul hasn't done a lot of work. Somehow he's I mean, when you look at it, the films that he's been in, you're like, wow, I know these movies. But, you know, Prom Night 2, yeah, he was in there. He was in there as dancer number 2. Fatal Attraction, great film, right? Yeah, he was a bar patron. So yeah, he's been involved in films that are really, really good. But I mean, this was essentially his thing. I guess he probably went overseas to get his agent set him up that way. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is, out of everybody in the film, he's like the only one who's still going, and he doesn't have very much on in his his entire thing consists of what, like less than 10 movies, and they sort of like end 1990s, and then suddenly 2018 he's got the role of Tony in a film called Deadly Manor, which I've never heard of, but I'm kind of wanting to track it down now, just to say that, like, I saw this and Tony is that guy from, Ghosthouse, that Umberto Lenzi film. Yeah, why not, right? Now, Martha, on the other hand, she had a much greater career, I guess you'd say. And she had what I would guess would be pretty typical of Italian actors, actresses of the day. She was in, things like My Dear Killer or Hired to Kill, The Perfume of the Lady in Black. Of course, these are the English titles. But she was also in Tenebrae, which is where I recognized her from before seeing this film, because I've seen Tenebrae more than once. So yeah, I was quite surprised to see that in there. And she's also in Zombie, like 5, Killing Birds, which I don't think I've actually seen. I don't own it. I have to actually track down the Italian zombie films in order. Is there like an Italian dub for Night of the Living Dead, which would have been the first? I don't know. Let me know down below if you've seen like Night of the Living Dead with the zombie title on it, because that would be kind of cool. But again, she essentially stopped doing anything in the 90s, and so that was it. Now, the 4, I think it's 4, could have been 3, I can't remember. I think there's 4. One of them gets bumped off really early, and then you have the other 3 young people that they meet up with that happen to be at the house. And they also find a hitchhiker along the way who somehow manages to find them at the house. But whatever, it's not important. It's kind of stupid. But yeah, the 4 that they meet there are essentially, honestly, they're throwaway characters. Yes, they give you somebody to interact with, but you're almost like, these people are so stupid that you just want to see them die. You just want to see them die. Like, I mean, they realize something bad is happening. Somebody's been killed. There's a killer on the loose. And instead of, packing up and getting the hell out of Dodge and, going home or just, going on with their journey, they decide to, go back into the house and, take a shower, look around, hang out, whatever, essentially, going separate ways, individual ways, and being by themselves, which is, exactly what you would do with a killer on the loose who's killed one of your friends in that area already. Right? That's what you do. The 4 people, you've got Susan, played by Mary Sellers, who had a few other horror roles that you might know. She also was in a bunch of, oddly enough, Italian and North American type films. Of course, she was in Stage Fright, which is probably where she had her biggest role outside of this. She had a small little bit in The Last Temptation of Christ. And then she was also in the film The Crawlers. The Crawlers. But oddly enough, she is essentially the only other one who continued on, and she actually continued her career. She was there's a Nickelodeon program, Mia and Me, which she did a voice for, and that was in the like 2011, 2012-ish area. And then from then she went back into film, and she was in the 2013 Romeo and Juliet. Remember that film that nobody went to see? She didn't have a big role in it, but she played one of the bit parts there. Obviously, still a working actress. And right up until 2018, she's got a part in a film called The Orchard, believe it or not. So she's continued on working, which is nice. And then you've got Tina, played by Kate Silver. This is her only thing she's ever done, so she's a nobody. There are a bunch of people who this was the only thing they ever did. The only other person of note, really, in this film is the that caretaker character. I think it was Volkos was his actual name. Did they even say that in the movie? I think it was in the credits, his name, but I don't think. Maybe they did. No, they must have. They must have when they were talking about him. Yeah. Anyways, it's late. Give me a break. Yeah. He's the only real other person of note. In fact, he's probably the biggest person of note. He's played by Donald O'Brien. And now Donald O'Brien has, just like the other working Italian actors, had a huge amount of things that he was in. A lot of spaghetti westerns, a lot of westerns and war movies, that type of thing, and not just Italian stuff. Like, I mean, he was in the 1964 film The Train, which is a black and white film set in, I think it's World War II. Great movie. Highly recommend you track that one down if you like war films. It's a fantastic one. I think it's Twilight Time, I think, had released it on Blu-ray, but I think you can get the DVD. Well, maybe that's a Twilight Time release as well. I don't know, maybe. But yeah, so he's been in a ton of stuff. Some of the ones that I liked, Kung Fu Brothers in the Wild, mixing the Western with Kung Fu, is something I definitely want to track down. It's not something I've seen, but I definitely want to check it out. But he's also been Kioma, that's a huge one. He was in that one. Yeti, Giant of the 20th Century, a film I haven't seen. I think they played it a year or two ago in a small little, back room of a video rental place, and I wanted to check it out. But yeah, I mean, Manana, A Man Called Blade, Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals, Tough to Kill, Zombie Holocaust. He actually plays Dr. Obrero, Dr. Butcher. He's the main character in that. And that, if you're into this Italian horror stuff, you should know that one right off the bat. But he's the Panther Squad, Hands of Steel, and these were all before this film. The Sect in 1991, Frankenstein 2000. So yeah, he had a huge career going, and yeah, again, another person from this film whose career essentially ended early 1990s. It's so weird, eh? And so yeah, so I get the point of him in the film as, you know, being the one-off to explain the killing of the first person, so that everybody isn't thinking haunted house. But at the same time, honestly, that should have been it. Why he comes back later, why he starts killing people. Yes, he's considered a lunatic or a crazy person, but still, I mean, it's kind of this is supposed to be about the haunted house, and yet, you know, you've used him for his bit, but yet he comes back kind of pointless. And yeah, it all comes down to the fact that you just don't care about really anybody in this film. You don't care if they live, if they die. You just want to see what the next kill is going to be. And this film takes a long time. There's a lot of exposition in between things that's really unnecessary. Leslie was disappointed because she was hoping, you know, it's a haunted house movie. She was hoping it would be scary. It's not. It really isn't. She did not like the music, the song, you know, from the recording that's played throughout the movie. If I can find it, it'll be playing right now. She did not like it at all. I, on the other hand, loved it, and I told her, I was like, as soon as the movie ended, she was like, "Oh my god, I hate that." And I was like, "No, you don't understand. I want to play that for Halloween, just on a loop." And she was like, "Okay," but in the movie, it drove me nuts. But yeah, she wasn't too pleased. She was happy that it wasn't in Italian, and she also had to and forcing her to read subtitles while watching the movie. She was at least happy about that, but she said it was like a 2.5 out of 5 at most, and it was kind of stupid, mainly for the same reasons that I've gone on and explained here. And I don't blame her. I really don't. The kills could be better. They could be better. But funny thing about this film, it's called La Casa 3. And this is a side note. It's honestly, I'm going to give it, I'll probably also give it a 2.5 out of 5 myself. I'm going to give it a recommend simply because it's not terrible. Like, it's not a terrible film. It's not a very good film. And I love Italian horror films. I love Umberto Lenzi and his other films. So if you're a fan, check it out. If you haven't seen much or any Italian horror, I would say steer clear of this one for now. Go see something else. Go watch The Beyond or anything, or any of the giallos or anything. Go that route and and actually get a taste and a flair for the good stuff before you delve into this one. But then come back and check it out. But yeah, like I was saying, La Casa 3. You're thinking, wow, okay, so what were the first two movies? Yeah, there are a La Casa 1 and a La Casa 2. We know them here as Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Yeah, you see, those were released as, the haunted, essentially the House 1 and the House 2 in Italy. And so to jump onto that, to try and essentially get, use the popularity of those two movies. And I mean, it's a classic Italian thing to do, right? So using the popularity of those two movies to sell this film, and of course, as a result, it actually ends up doing quite well in theaters. Believe it or not, it did actually really, really well. And so it's funny because the film The House of the Ogre, which was initially released as Demons 3 to capitalize on the popularity of Demons and Demons 1 and Demons 2, it was actually released on DVD as Ghosthouse 2, as like it was the sequel to this one, which is odd. Absolutely odd. And it's funny because this isn't the last La Casa film. There's a La Casa 4, Witchcraft, which is the film Witchery, which is the other half of this particular 2-pack. Will we check that out this year? Maybe, we'll see. And then there's also La Casa 5, but there doesn't seem to be anything past that, unfortunately. So, quite an interesting thing. A little tidbit to add on to the end here. So, yeah, like I said, me and Leslie both gave it about 2.5 out of 5. She had to kind of stretch it to 2.5. I think she was leaning more towards 2, but she eventually came around to my side before going to bed. Yeah, so that is Ghosthouse, or La Casa 3. You know, clearly you should watch this after Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. It's the logical progression of a series. It has nothing to do with them. Nothing at all. So don't get those confused. It was just a marketing ploy. Yeah. Anyways, I'm rambling on here. I'm going off on a tangent. Bring it all back. If you've seen the film, let me know what you thought. Keep it spoiler free. Love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Till next video, take care.